With all the crazy stuff happening in the world right now, wouldn't it be nice to feel like you had a superpower? Not the kind that fixes everything outside of you, but the kind that helps you stay clear and grounded inside yourself during crisis. The kind that makes you feel centered when everyone else is spinning. The kind that makes you know how to be at the right place at the right time without having to be everywhere all the time. And the truth is, of course, that you do. Actually, science even shows that your nervous system reads what's happening long before your mind does. You can feel shifts in emotion, shifts in tone, and energy in your environment before a single word is spoken. And if you can feel that just from your immediate environment, why wouldn't you be able to feel it from further beyond? Right. And so actually, we do have that superpower. We do have that antenna that can pick up all of that information and the kind of gifts to be able to process that information that allows us to really use it as a superpower. But here's the thing, if you have spiritual gifts, chances are at some point in your life, you learn to disregard them. You were told that what you felt wasn't real, that your sensitivity itself was a problem, that messages or intuitions or even dreams you received were just imagination or silly or don't matter. And yet, over time, you've probably discovered the opposite. And those quiet sensations, the truths you felt deep down, were the only thing that were ever really real. Everything else, the opinions, the systems, the noise, as we call it, that was the illusion. That was the piece that's actually in question. So now, in a time when so much feels unstable for so many people, anchoring in your superpower, anchoring in your gifts is truly essential. They're part of you that's designed to hold you steady when the world shakes. The part that knows how to stay connected to truth, even when fear, inside or outside of you, gets really loud. And as we move through this conversation today, you're going to start to feel that steadiness return. You'll notice yourself exhale, at least that's my intention. You'll remember the guidance you've been waiting for has been here all along, and you can trust it. And if you stay with me by the end of this episode, you'll feel reconnected to the part of you that already knows what's real. And the recognition alone of that is going to shift everything for you. Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show for the spiritual guide who knows there's more. More depth, more truth, more realness in the work you're here to do. Whether you're a healer, coach, or intuitive, this podcast helps you reconnect with your gifts, trust your path, and lead from soul, not stress. Hosted by me, Spirit Bird. I'm a master shaman, best-selling author, and founder of Holton Healing Arts. My intention is that each episode brings grounded insight into spiritual growth, energy mastery, and the real-life journey of walking as a spiritual leader. You can find me at Spirit Bird Official. Enjoy the show. There's this idea that gets passed around a lot in spiritual spaces that your gifts have to be quote unquote activated. So I want to start here and build onto, our theme for today. So this idea that your gifts are going to be activated, that one day after enough trainings or initiations or ceremonies that something will finally click, that the lights will turn on, your intuition will explode open, and you'll finally just arrive at this knowing or at this superpower. And in particular, again, that those activations come from outside of you, that it's something new or different that you need to experience in order for them to be activated. But that's not really how it works. Your gifts don't wait for something outside you. They're not skills you have to collect or achievements you have to earn or a certain level of being a good enough person to earn. They're the essence of who you are. Your gifts are the essence of who you already are. They've been working your entire life, And the reason most people can't really see them is because they're looking for fireworks, visions, colors, clear voices, when in reality, the way that your gifts express themselves feel very ordinary. And in the bigger topic, as this conversation makes its way into the world, one of the reasons that this truth gets overlooked or suppressed is because people that are talking about how to open your gifts want to seem impressive. They want to impress you, right? Because they're speaking from their ego. And so if they can make the gifts feel bigger or more important or like fireworks, then maybe you'll care. And I really just want to, without shaming that kind of rhetoric, I just really want to name that's what's happening here. And so it can be a place where we can get sidetracked or confused or feel like we're not enough, like we're not in our gifts yet. And it's just not the truth. They're so ordinary, so natural that most of us overlook them. And most of us were taught to overlook them on some level, whether it was consciously by people that are trying to suppress, or whether that's subtly through, the rhetoric of the culture. When I'm working with people, I often see this old framework come up, the idea that your spiritual gifts are skills you learn and acquire, like learning how to play an instrument. And I just want to say that approach does work for sure. That approach can get you there eventually, but it's slow and it keeps you in the mindset that you are missing something. And, picture this with me. It's like the difference between this old approach and how I like to work with them is like the old approach is, seeing yourself like in a book, kind of studying, trying to acquire this skill. You're very narrowly focused that I want to learn this one skill. And my method is different. It's more about being open. It's more about expanding your viewpoint. Instead of adding more techniques to allow you to achieve a thing, I like to, then this is the way that I work for myself too. I like to remove what's blocking you from seeing what's already there. It's like that easy. It's that simple. And most people overcomplicate it. And that's why they get stuck in spin. Because for almost everyone, the gifts are already active somewhere in your life and somewhere in your consciousness. You are just not recognizing them yet, again, because of usually the culture that we're in. So rather than doing more work, let's release the illusion that they're missing. Can we start there? Let's release this idea that there's somehow not clarity for you yet. Because there aren't things you need to do to get more clear. There aren't things you need to do to get stronger in your gifts. There are things that can help, but the easiest, fastest, cleanest way to get there is, again, to remember that it's already clear. So let me give you an example, especially how this relates to gifts. In my healer programs, in my healer trainings, I would say roughly 20, maybe 25% of the people who join my healer training programs think they're not clairvoyant at all. And clairvoyant meaning, to spiritually see. So they sit in rooms. This is what they experience often, is they're in rooms with other intuitives who are describing colors and lights and visions. And they start to believe, oh, I must not have that gift. They're really good at it and I must not have that. But here's what always happens to this 25% of folks that are in my training. By the end of the program, every single one of them realizes they can see perfectly well. They just didn't know how their clairvoyance worked. That's the only thing that needed to shift. For some people, clairvoyance shows up through memory. They'll suddenly recall a scene or an image that perfectly mirrors the energy that they're working with or the energy that's happening in the conversation they're having. For others, it's symbolic. They'll say, I didn't see anything, but I kept getting the image of a door. That is seeing. Their inner sight just communicates through metaphor rather than picture. And for others, it's really somatic. They feel the image like in their body instead of watching it with their mind's eye. So, about a quarter of the people who come through my even advanced healer trainings start out saying they can't see energy. And by the end, not one of them still believes that. Every single person discovers how clairvoyant they truly are once they remove the mental filters that have them telling themselves that they aren't. Once they remove the distorted lens on how they were viewing them. So that's the power of recognition. Your gifts don't need to be activated, they need space. And when you clear the noise, we're going to talk more about this in a minute. There's lots of noise in the world and what that means. They'll start speaking in the language they've been always using, but it's now a language that you can understand. And when that happens, something's going to shift inside you. And as a result of that shift, you stop chasing experiences that aren't meant for you, and you start trusting your own perception, and you start understanding where you need to be and when. You begin to see that the quiet ways your awareness works, the quiet ways your consciousness works, are not less real than all of the other ways we've been taught to value information. They're not less real than logic, right? They're not less real than science. They're simply your unique expression of spiritual gifts, wisdom, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So before we go any deeper, I want to pause and name something here. If you're listening because the world feels heavy right now, because you're watching the news, seeing people suffer, like massive suffering, or feeling the weight of injustice, you're not wrong to feel that. Your system is responding to what's happening, at least on one level in the world. But in times of crisis or exhaustion, whether this is, socially, or whether that's, intimately in your family or something happening in your life, we often see a small sliver of what's really occurring. There's a tendency with crisis to look through a very narrow lens. And that's what causes us to dysregulate. It's like, of course, if there's something that is an emergency that feels like a crisis, that feels fearful, or there's a lot of panic in, most of us tend to kind of drop our wider lens and just focus on that very immediate thing. And sometimes we need to, like if there's somebody who's like in a medical emergency in front of you, sometimes that narrow lens is important, but it also cuts off something really important. And what happens as a result also is our energy collapses around the small picture. Right? So it's like your energy is this expansive thing that suddenly collapses and kind of falls around this small picture instead of remembering the larger one. So that's again where your spiritual gifts come in. They widen your perspective. They widen your viewpoint. They help you remember that there's more happening than what meets the eye. There's more happening than what's in this very narrow lens. That spirit, timing, and unseen intelligence, all of that is working even in the chaos, or what we view as the chaos. By the way, not to diminish other people's suffering by any means, but chaos is really just a word for something we don't recognize, for something we're not used to, for something that's unknown, for change that we don't want, or we think we don't want. So anyway, understanding how your gifts function brings you out of that tunnel vision and back into a wider coherence. And I want you to think it like this. So spiritual gifts are things that you do, but when I talk about spiritual gifts, I'm also talking about you, like who you really are. When you're really your highest self, when you're really the deepest truth of who you are, then your spiritual gifts are also at work, right? When you're open to those gifts, you're also in your highest self. So when I talk about gifts, what I'm also talking about is you being your true self, your whole self on all of the levels. And your spiritual gifts aren't what you do, it's what happens through you. They're not accessories or extras. They're the natural way your energy interacts with life. When people start exploring their gifts, they usually look for the obvious ones like clairvoyance, clairaudience, mediumship. But there are hundreds of other gifts, many that I'm sure don't even have names yet. So your gifts are the energetic expression that create harmony around you, that create understanding, that create healing. They're how soul healing moves through your life. Whether, you call yourself a healer or not, this is true. I want to be clear here. You don't have to be a healer or be trying to be a healer for this to be the truth of how the gifts move through you, how soul healing moves. So, for example, I'll give a couple of ways that has happened in my life. One of my gifts is communication through nature. During sessions with people, or even if I'm walking with close friends, birds often appear in really specific ways. Like sometimes a hawk circles right above as someone's receiving an insight. I was just hiking with a friend of mine, and we were talking about a really sensitive subject of something that's happening in our life. And right when she said something really poignant, a flock of crows flew really close just above us. Sometimes a group of birds gathers near when somebody I'm working with is releasing grief, even though we're not in the same room. We might be on a session across the globe, and they'll reflect that that's happening. It's not random. The natural world is responding to the shift in the energy and responding to me allowing those gifts to come through. And in times of collective stress, like right now, that gift, which might on the surface level seem insignificant, that gift becomes a living reminder that we're never separate from the intelligence of life, that we're never separate from this greater web, from this greater understanding. And honestly, from a much longer time frame than what we are viewing in this when we get narrow focused. So even when the human world feels kind of chaotic, nature is always communicating stability and order for the best and highest good, right? So this particular gift, again, that seems insignificant. It helps people remember that the earth itself holds balance, and we can attune to that rhythm instead of fear. I wanted to use this kind of seemingly insignificant gift on purpose, because that's the point we're going to get to in a minute. That oftentimes we dismiss these knowings, we dismiss these gifts, or we believe that we can't keep playing in them during a time of crisis, when actually something that simple, the fact that birds show up when something meaningful is happening for folks that are working with me, that it also is this remembrance of the earth's balance, that this is an energy that we can actually feel in our body and channel and come out through us and into the world. So it's really powerful in a very subtle, kind of ordinary way. Another gift that I work with is dream teaching. So people often tell me they'll see me in their dreams, guiding them through a lesson or an experience. And I think it's a little bit of both. It's like partially a gift, it's partially intentional on my part. And also at the same time, it's not about me personally. It's typically their soul using the energetic relationship we've built to complete a process of understanding. Dreams are classrooms for soul healing. They're where your highest self finishes what your waking mind can't quite grasp yet. And in times of crisis, that gift becomes really deeply supportive because the dream space really allows people to receive guidance their conscious mind is too overwhelmed to hear. It is like this secret superpower. It's like this, you know, hidden layer of your consciousness, right? So it helps you process what's happening from a higher perspective where peace and meaning can return again, even in the spin of the chaos that's happening or the crisis that's happening. When I realized that, it changed a lot. I stopped trying to make my gifts look like other people's. I stopped chasing validation or stopped trying to prove that my gifts work or mean something or important. The more I trusted how they naturally express, the more effective and peaceful everything became, even in the spinning, even in the chaos, even in the confusion or the disorder without bypassing. We'll get to that again in a minute. So I just want to paint that picture. That's what happens when spiritual awareness matures. You stop measuring yourself by what you think you should be able to do. You stop measuring yourself or comparing yourself to how other people's gifts express through them. And you stop assuming that your life isn't where you want it to be because you have more work to do or you need to be better or there's a block, right? You begin to understand that your life is already designed to draw out your gifts, and it's just a matter of understanding the language of how to work with that. And the challenges you're facing are not proof something's wrong with you. I just want to call that out. That's a big misconception in the spiritual space, that if you don't have the house you want or the job you want or enough money or the perfect partner, then it must be that there's something, or if you're sick, that there must be something wrong energetically with you that you need to fix, and then that will fix the external. I'm a big fan of we can use the relationship between your internal self and external self for information, but I'm not a fan of this black and white viewpoint that if something's wrong in the world, it starts in you. We all have shadow work to do, of course, but it's just not that literal. So anyway, the challenges you're facing aren't proof that something's wrong with you. They're invitations for your gifts to come forward in new ways. They're invitations for the veil that you had that kept you from seeing to be removed. And when that recognition lands, your whole system begins to regulate. You stop trying to get somewhere else. You start living from what's already true. For practitioners, for professional healers, this understanding changes a lot because you also, as a consequence, begin to attract clients who match your frequency. You can hold more transformation with even less effort. Your work feels easier because your energy isn't split trying to be something you're not. But I think even if you're not a practitioner, this work is still essential because what's happening right now, politically, socially, globally, requires people who can stay connected to the deeper truth of who they really are. So important. And, I like to emphasize this point too, because I have conversations with a lot of people, and this is something I run into a lot where they can feel this sense. Blue jay just landed on my window right here, a couple feet away. So they can feel this sense of something in their gifts is wanting to move, or they're feeling a calling to something else or something new, or there's something in their life that they just can't keep doing, right? And what happens for most people is they kind of diminish that by focusing on external suffering. So they focus on the bad things that are happening in the world. And this becomes this like trap of like how to diminish themselves. And what's so frustrating actually is somebody who's been in this work for decades and helped so many people navigate this space is like, oh my gosh, you're so close. It's actually like you're being summoned, essentially. You are being summoned to step into the gifts because this is what the earth and the collective wants and needs to move through the challenging times. Like you experiencing and going through this journey of who you really are might feel selfish or insignificant, but it's what the collective needs to balance itself out. And because of all the things that are happening right now, there's going to be even more calls, especially for people that can stay connected to the deeper truth of who they really are. People who can feel that what's happening in the collective, and not lose themselves in the process. That they can see, what's in front of them. They can see and be with the one reality that's happening around us. That often does include pain or suffering or injustice without losing their center, losing who they are. People who can witness without collapse is going to be really important for this time ahead. And likely you're being challenged with that right now too. And I want to name that part of the illusion is this idea that you can't turn off your empathy. You can. You definitely can. You just don't need to. When you're truly grounded in your gifts and centered in yourself, empathy stops being something that like floods or overwhelms you and starts being something that you can direct with precision. You know what's yours and what isn't. You can witness without taking it on. You can care deeply, really deeply, without carrying. That's spiritual gifts wisdom. It's remembering that your awareness isn't here to react. It's here to reveal. It's here to be revelatory. Your spiritual gifts wisdom is deeply connected to the unique person that you are on all of the levels. And that's what wants to be revealed through you. The earth and the collective is just begging for more of us to live from that space. And in times of crisis, that remembering is what steadies both you and the people around you. Hey, quick pause. If you've been feeling interested in your spiritual gifts or confused by them, or maybe you're actually really intuitive and you're just looking for what to do next, I made something for you. It's called A Course in Spiritual Gifts and Soul Healing, and it's basically the guide that I wish I had when all of this stuff was coming in. Everything from the context of what's actually happening in my life and with my gifts to how to really hold my gifts and anchor them in life in a clear and grounded way. We start off with a sacred reset, helping you get connected to yourself again, out of overwhelm and into your gifts right away. We cover things like work-life balance. I go deeply into the energy archetypes so you can deepen your own inner knowing and learn better communication and relational skills in a really magical way so you have deep, beautiful relationships. And then, of course, we go deep into the soul gift process where you do a healing journey alongside of opening your spiritual gifts and learning how to use them every day and for the rest of your life. It's a beautiful course. And my favorite part about it is you can do all of this without having to be perfect or having to constantly be more spiritual. So if that's something that your soul's been nudging you towards, you can find out more information at holtonhealingarts.com/the course. Now back to the show. So even just the act of being able to, maybe you have a neighbor that's going through a hard time. You can witness that they're having a hard time. You can empathize, you can understand what that feels like, right? And also you can be with them in that feeling, in that what feels like a struggle, and also stay connected to the truth of who you are, the truth of your beliefs and how you see the world. And when those two things happen together, oof, that's what the world needs. Once you start living from your higher spiritual awareness, life will test you. So this is the next stage, right? finding your gifts, learning to stay centered in your gifts. And now, well, I said life will test you. I really don't like that word. I would say life is going to present opportunities for embodiment. So it's not, I don't like the word test because it's not like they're giving you a test to like pass or fail you. They're giving you a challenge to make you stronger, not because you're being punished or because you're doing something wrong, but because embodiment, right? So embodiment meaning like it's really part of you rather than just a concept you understand. It's how you live rather than idea, you know? So embodiment only becomes real when it meets some resistance. It's like if this hasn't happened to you, I'm sure you can think of somebody you know that was like all Zen, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm all Zen and here are all these like wonderful things about my life. And then, they had a family crisis or then they had a kid, you know? And so they're being met with resistance for them to actually embody the truths and the awarenesses that they have, right? It's not that they're being tested and they need to pass or fail. They're just being called to get stronger in that embodiment. So the moment you really start anchoring in that truth, the multidimensional truth of who you are, what you might find is the collective noise. And by that, I mean other people's beliefs, I guess, um, other people's influence, media, community, family. The collective noise gets louder. It almost always happens to people on their path. And it makes sense that as we are becoming more embodied in our multidimensional nature and the truth of who we are and how we are actually designed to interact with life, that as a collective, we would be tested with more noise, with more fear. It's not a trick, it's a challenge to deepen into this truth, to not abandon the evolution we've been going through, to not abandon the seeing that's been revealed on a collective level for us in the face of fear. And again, right now I'm kind of talking about the greater global political, social issues that are happening, but this is so true for just in your intimate life too. Those pieces often are mirrors as well. So you might feel it in conversations or in your social feeds, in the energy of the room you're in, the fear, the outrage, the urgency. It pulls at you. And this is where it can get tricky, is that fear, that outrage, that urgency, whatever it's related to, is going to tempt you. It's going to invite you to join the drama, to pick a side, to react. So know it for what it is. I'm not saying don't have an opinion. I'm not saying don't, stand in your beliefs. It's quite the opposite. But know the trick for what it is. Know the sneaky pull of drama for what it is. It's not a sign that you're losing connection, right? It's just the invitation to practice your own connection, to recognize a false distraction, to recognize an energetic leak, and to choose what's actually best, not just for you, but for others too. But it starts with you, of course. So every time you start noticing yourself absorbing other people's emotions, every time you feel the world like spinning faster, you might be feeling that right now, and you take a breath, instead of matching its speed automatically, you take a breath instead of matching the drama or the outrage. You take a breath on the other side of things, and instead of matching the bypass, every time you do that, you are embodying your gifts. Embodiment isn't something you talk about, It's something you do in your nervous system in real time. It's how soul healing becomes physical. So here's what that looks like. When you're embodied, your choices slow down. You start responding instead of reacting. You can hold awareness of what's happening without letting it consume you. So, say you're scrolling the news and feel that familiar wave of anxiety start to rise, or maybe you're even scrolling your social feed and there's a goal you're working on and you're seeing a bunch of people that appear to be doing that thing, right? And you start to feel that anxiety start to rise. If you're not embodied, your mind grabs that story, right, of whatever it is that you're reading or seeing, and it starts to run with it. But if you are embodied, if you are in your spiritual gifts wisdom, you can pause, you can feel your body, you can remember in the most extreme circumstances, I'm here, I'm in here. You can feel that. So take a moment and feel that with me. You are still in there. Let your breath bring you back to presence. Let your heart open enough to stay connected, to stay aware without collapsing. That's what it means to stay the course. And by the way, by collapsing, I mean both, going into sort of the negative form of collapsing, like I can't do it, or it's too overwhelming, or I don't know how to move through it. But the other form of collapsing can be sort of that immediate reactive state. That's also collapse. Anything that takes you all out of your center. So that's what I mean by staying the course. Not about detachment or denial. It's about staying in integrity with your energy. Because the more embodied you are, the less likely you are to abandon yourself when the world asks for more than it should. Regardless of who's responsible for that, right? So that might be coming from a situation with your family that is feeling triggering and chaotic and overwhelming. That might be a situation with your job. That might be, the global situation in general. So this is really where true spiritual awareness becomes leadership. Hold your center. You quietly regulate the space around you. Your calm gives permission for other people's nervous system to settle. I teach this in my psychedelic training too. So often when somebody starts going through a process, new or untrained facilitators immediately go into kind of overdrive, or they go into panic, or they go into drama, or they pedestalize the situation. And what that actually does is create a lack of safety. So your calm gives permission for other people's nervous systems to settle. There's a difference between calm and denial, right? We're just talking about calm here. You start to feel a relief, not because the world itself suddenly changed, not because the problem changed, not because the world suddenly feels safe, but because you've remembered how to be safe within yourself. That is an energetic vibration that ripples out. That is some serious healing work right there. That is some serious spiritual gifts. It's soul healing in real time. It's the practice of coming back to the wider lens in the middle of the chaos. It's the moment you realize that peace isn't a place that you reach through circumstances changing. It's a presence that you build from within yourself. And the more you build it, the stronger it becomes. And the stronger it becomes, the more you'll be challenged to embody it. That's why every challenging moment, every trigger, every collective wave of emotion is an opportunity to deepen that embodiment while also expanding your understanding of the great web that we are interacting with, the wider context and the wider lens of what's happening in the world and how that affects other people and how that affects the earth and how that affects the cosmos and how that affects your ancestry and how that affects our future, right? And there's this place in the middle of that web where there's so much peace, where you are centered, where you can feel all of the truths, all of the beautiful, epic, amazing truths, all of the frightening uncertainties. And just from here, without having to do anything, without having to move, you can simply feel and witness it all. And just like a spider from the center of the web, you're able to tap into your superpower. The spider is able to feel that tiny little tap at a certain part of the web, or a tiny tap over here, and know instinctually if this is one that they actually need to go to, if it's time to move, or if it's not. And that's going to be different for each person, because what your soul is here to do is very different. And your body is not just a vessel for your soul, it's a vessel for spirit. It's the ground where spirit gets to move through you. And if you aren't being you, spirit can't move. And if the world seems to be challenging you to abandon who you are and what you need in favor of the noise or the drama, I encourage you to just take a pause and check yourself and feel for that most potent place to move from. Feel for, is this actually a move or not? And remind yourself, if you weren't thinking or worried about how anyone else would react to your decisions, what would you truly want and what would you truly do? That's a shortcut to your center. So give yourself some time and space to just let that be present. Again, not asking you to do nothing, just asking you to do one of the most important things and to feel that. And to pause so that when you do move, it's with deep, deep intention. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed the show, would you subscribe and leave us a review? Let us know you did at Spirit Bird Official. We love to support our listeners. And if you enjoyed the show, please share it with someone else who would also enjoy it. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.